Welcome to Weekends with Simon Marnie
on ABC Radio Sydney and New South Wales.
But I've been talking about the Buy from the Bush campaign, and it's been hard to miss. But in case you're not familiar with it, it's a movement that started back in October by Warren, local Grace Brennan, and it's given very timely lifeline to many small businesses, families and communities struggling through the drought and bushfire conditions. But even before Buy from the Bush was born, many families were looking for ways to diversify their businesses, finding those opportunities that compensate for loss of income via those traditional means. So today we're going to talk to some people about how they've seen an opportunity and gone for it. How did they do it? How they've kept the business, in some cases, a side hustle, afloat. We'll meet Jane Kay, who's the CEO and founder of Bird's Nest, a business she's grown from a small clothing shop in Cooma to one of our great retail success stories. Or Harry Watson. His family are behind Millpost Merino, a super fine merino yarn retailer created as a project off the back of the family sheep farm. Then there's Gillian Kelly. She's an artist based in Coonamble, and she's seen the effects of the drought from her day job as a vet, but then also experienced a massive upswing in her artwork since Buy from the Bush was launched. And here in the studio, Brian Walker, CEO of the Retail Doctor Group, a consultancy and advisory organisation for the retail business. And Brian, welcome to the Weekend Show. It strikes me that 4 or 5 years ago, online was going to kill the retail business. The bookshop was gone, the record shop was going. But contrary to that, some businesses have managed to actually bloom.
Oh, absolutely, Simon, and wonderful to be here this morning. It's interesting, when we look at Australian retail sales, and we'll take a macro view for a moment, 330 billion in this country spent on retail, and on average about 10% is spent online. Now that's an average, of course it's higher, and what we do find is retailers thinking about how to create, adapt different points of difference, such as your examples today, and using online to really supplement their business.
So what are the successes of online marketing? Do you need to have a unique product?
I think the success of any marketing of any business is to have a great point of difference, to have a uniqueness, to have a good clarity around that offer, and to have something that appeals to your target market. And I think the examples today will show that.
One of the things that intrigues me, though, is that I still like that personal conversation when I'm buying something. And that's harder to get in an online environment, or is it?
Oh, it's much harder. And what's also interesting, of course, is that we talk to all retailers about what's called omni-channel, physical space and online to support it. And we see this great trend of researching online and buying offline or in the stores. But we also see dedicated online examples. You know one of the things that's driving this now, Simon? We spend an average of 3.5 hours a day on our smartphones, on our devices. We are massive researchers of retail product and all other services, for that matter, and products. And so retailers today have to have an online presence. And these examples we'll talk to today, the people we'll talk to today, have really taken that to the next level.
But then again, there's also the how are you today? There's the that follow-up service. There's the clever retail's really good at. You don't know you're being sold stuff because the conversation's great. How do you manage to establish that in an online environment?
Well, that's about chatbots. You know, we're seeing the world of chatbots and AI, artificial intelligence, coming into the marketplace. We're seeing very, very good predictive analytics on the back of websites and databases. That's all starting to happen. But ultimately, it's about, from a retail point of view, it's building your online offer, having a good database around customer relationship, and then being able to track your inquiries and communicate with them.
What's been your experience? 1300 222 702. As you listen to this, have you bought online? What's the experience been like? Were you initially cynical or did you jump straight in? And then particularly if you are a regional business, has online given you that access to a city market that perhaps you didn't have before? 1300 222 702 as we talk regional retail, how to create and grow a successful business back in the bush.
On ABC Radio Sydney and New South Wales, this is Simon Marnie.
I mentioned Gillian Kelly, I mentioned Harry Watson, and I mentioned Jane Kay. Now, Jane Kay is the founder and big bird of Bird's Nest. And for you, Jane, it's been a phenomenal success from a very small clothing shop in Cooma. Take me through that journey.
Yes, it does seem like a bit of an accidental ride. Good morning, Simon. So I was the girl who fell in love with a farmer in a big cowboy hat and landed Bungabi, which is 65 k's south of Cooma in New South Wales, and was literally the most impractical woman alive. I knew I wouldn't be much help on the farm. So, yes, I did end up in a little retail store in a classic sort of very eclectic store in a country town that had been a rural merchandise store, but now really 60% of what it sold when we took it over back in 2004 was women's fashion. And what I worked out is that was probably the only bit of the business that was really, flying and working well. And I didn't know anything about retail. And so, yes, from there, that was certainly the beginning.
So you had to learn about the tangible four walls in a building retail. When did the idea of an online presence develop?
Well, yes, definitely. I was that sort of walk in and vacuum the floors and open the doors. And really, when I met Ollie, the farmer, I was working in Sydney actually for IBM. So I'd been at university at the time in the 90s when the internet was just becoming mainstream, and, we were really, I guess, waking up to the fact that this thing was really going to change the world. It was going to change not only the way we shopped but also the way we learnt and dated and did everything, and it's certainly going to transform the business world. So I had this kind of background in technology and in this kind of new digital economy that we were becoming part of. And so I guess once I worked out that there was some real magic happening on this shop floor in this little town, I thought, well, how do we take that to a broader audience? And I think it was about 2006 that I started talking to people about, I wonder what would happen if we took this online. Most people thought I was nuts.
But it sounds to me as though you were far more comfortable in the online retail world than the four walls and a ceiling one.
Actually, you're probably right. I definitely, really had to learn what being a retailer was all about, and it was just the best way to get into a rural community. I think, you really do learn everyone's name when you're in a town of 6,500 and you're serving the women of that town. And to my shock, it was such a delight. I just really loved. What I realised quite quickly is that I was not while we were selling frocks or dresses, I realised very quickly we're not really in the business of product. This was a service, and there was a transformation that, you could take a woman through. And I just started getting fascinated by the process of that journey for a person, in this space. And for women, clothing is, we're very judged on our appearance, and I think fashion can be quite a vulnerable space, and to create the right environment around that, we were doing that. So how could we and you talked about that personal touch that you have and that thing that happens when you create a connection with someone. My challenge was, how did we translate that into the online world and take it and reach more women?
Stay listening because I want to bring you in and out of the conversation. That is Jane Kay, CEO and founder of Bird's Nest. Is retail online, Brian, some areas are more suited for it than other areas?
Yeah, I think what Jane shows us is that her origin as a physical store retailer, building the brand, getting the ranges right, knowing the customers, enabled her to continue to build a brand, and a brand that could then transfer onto online. So really, Simon, what we're seeing is, in that example, online works beautifully. In the broader sense, online tends to lend itself at first glance to the more commoditized product, books, tickets, and so forth. And that gives rise ultimately to the Amazonian type models. At the local niche level, it's very, very much about quality, service, delivery. And it'd be interesting to ask Jane what sort of returns, if any, she gets online, because that's one of the factors in building an online business.
Jane.
You mean in terms of if she walks into a change room in a physical store, she's going to maybe try on 5 things, and of course she's not going to keep all of them. So how does that translate to an online world?
Oh, I guess so. Simply put, as well, if you're sending out a product online and you're shipping it out there, does much come back?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a huge part of our business. So 20 to 30% in fashion, and that's actually quite low. I know it can get up to 40 or 50% in fashion for different retailers, does come back in the door. And that's something we had to learn was, and that's also the last touch point you have with a customer, so it's so important that it's a positive one.
Yeah, that's right. And it used to be the adage, of course, that online retail was, quote, cheaper to run than physical stores. You didn't have the rental and so forth. But in reality, as you're saying, that return rate of freight, particularly free returns, that can be expensive.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it is, definitely. And the expectations around how for customers to provide that at no cost, which is very difficult. Obviously, when you drive to the stores, you have to park, and then you have to, whereas, I guess we've always just wanted to offer the best that we can that is also sustainable for the business, and I guess that's how we've managed to still be here.
Oh, that's right. And what's nice, of course, is that we can do business with you in New York, London, or Melbourne.
Yeah. So we can't believe we have customers certainly all over Australia, and we also have a number beyond our shores as well.
Jane Kay, CEO and founder of Bird's Nest in Coombe. A completely different business is Harry Watson. He's been in the merino wool area in the family since 1922. They were adopters to the idea of permaculture, and so perhaps the idea of moving into an online area was a little more open to them. Harry, describe your experience of how a merino farm works online.
Good morning, Simon. So we sell our wool through a few different avenues, and online is part of that. We also sell to bricks and mortar shops, wholesale, and then we go to fibre markets and that kind of thing too. So we sell our wool as knitting yarn, so 50 gram balls of yarn for home knitters. So that's quite a good product to sell online because there has no shelf life and it's fairly squishable. You can send it through the post easily.
It's not going to be returned for being the wrong size.
No, yes, we don't have too much of that. Only if I've stuffed up the order do we get returns, really. So it does lend itself really nicely to online marketing, and because knitting is such a visual hobby for people, they love knitters. Really have embraced social media and sharing their work online, and so we've been able to really take advantage of that. Knitters even have their own social media platform, Ravelry, which just shows how they've embraced the internet.
I like Brian's question to Jane about people being able to shop in New York or outside Australia, tapping into a small regional town. For you, you've managed to ship coals to Newcastle, and New Zealand is a market for you. Yeah.
Oh no. Well, we do have some customers in New Zealand, but actually New Zealand is where we do our processing. So we send our raw wool to New Zealand for scouring and spinning. Our mill is in New Zealand, and then it comes back to us for us to sell it.
How big a part is the retail online business of of Millpost Merino?
Oh, it varies depending on the time of year because knitting's so seasonal. Like at this time of year, we normally wouldn't be selling much online, but because of the Buy from the Bush campaign, we've actually turned a quiet period into quite a busy.
It's really had that big effect?
Oh yeah. I mean, we orders would just be trickling in this time of year because it's warm all over the country. People aren't thinking about their knitting projects. But Buy from the Bush really turn that around, and so we've been, our sales have been really strong through this sort of typical off-season period.
Have you noticed that as well, Jane?
Oh, we I guess have stepped one step. Well, I've just been watching the Buy from the Bush campaign with such a warm heart. However, I've sort of felt we haven't lent right into it in terms of trying to be part of the amazing thing that Grace has built. We're sort of on the sidelines cheering, I think, at what a wonderful thing kind of trickle effect that it's having. And certainly we've had shout out. I think it's just really reminded us of how important it is for people to connect with the stories and the businesses that they are engaging with, and how heartwarming it is that it's something that people can actually really step up and be part of and engage in. So I've loved hearing the stories. I've also loved hearing the stories of all the businesses that have become more digitally enabled through being encouraged through this Buy from the Bush, and then what that's done for their businesses. I think it's incredible.
What's particularly nice listening to Harry's story is this whole notion, of course, that online, in Harry's case, online, manufacturer, wholesaler, producer, so really spreading the revenue, the sales line, spreading the brand, and of course having different forms of revenue coming in at different times of the year, not just reliant on the one. So that's great. And Harry takes us into the world of social media, which, is a plethora, kaleidoscope of activity, but it all comes back to this uniqueness of product, uniqueness of offer. And Harry gives some good examples of that.
Also, one of the people that's got the personal experience of Buy from the Bush, I mentioned right at the beginning, is Gillian Kelly. By day, she's a vet, so sees firsthand the effect of the drought, but her true passion is as an artist, and she joins us on the line from Coonamble. Gillian, you actually know Grace Brennan and have seen a tangible change in your orders since Buy from the Bush came about.
Yeah, I'm from Coonamble, and I'm actually the Brennan's vet, so I know Grace and Jack personally, and them, like many other farming families out here, have been, very badly affected by this drought. Most farmers out here have been hand-feeding stock for 3 years, and, that's had a significant impact on their mental well-being and also their cash flow. And I think it's wonderful, this Buy from the Bush scheme that Grace has pioneered. Not only from a cash flow point of view, and particularly helping people like me that have got like a side hustle or a side business, but also just that connection with people from the city. It's really encouraging, the little notes you get with the orders, and just the connection that's been formed. It really feels like people are empathetic and people are with you and have your back. It's a very nice feeling in the lead up to Christmas.
As a visual artist, you're painting greeting cards that you can see on Facebook, Etsy and Instagram. How did you know that perhaps online was going to be a viable way for you to distribute those?
Well, I live quite remotely, so online really to me was the only option, especially because it's, I work full time and this is a side business. I paint under the name Misset on Instagram, Facebook and Etsy, and it was something I very much did on the weekends and in my spare time, and it was a very low-key hobby basically, something to take me away from the pressures of the drought and my job and things like that. But I think in the 12 months prior to Buy from the Bush, I wouldn't have had 60 orders all up in the 12-month period, and on the first day that I got featured on Buy from the Bush, I had 60 orders in the one day.
Wow.
So that's how much of an impact it's had on my business, and also, my Facebook and Instagram followers have doubled. They're on their way to tripling. So it's been terribly influential.
I'm going to come back now to Jane, because I just want to find out from your personal experience, Jane, what's the one piece of advice you would give to anybody that's listening, hoping to take their business online?
Oh, look, I think, in any business, it's, and you can hear the passion in both Gillian and Harry's voices, that, being in something that you really, that you enjoy and you pour your heart into, sort of comes first. And I think really understanding how your customers connect with that. So what is the problem that you're solving for your customer, and how are you doing that in a way that it is not being fulfilled by somebody else? It's kind of like at the core of any good business. And then once you take that online and people can then discover it, and you can kind of find your people, because all of a sudden you can reach more people. That's the beautiful thing about, expanding your market beyond your little town of, for us, 6,500, and I'm not sure, for the many other even smaller towns out there. So it's kind of like you can find your tribe online, and you need to know that tribe really well and what you're delivering to that customer, and how, I guess, you're solving essentially a problem for her. For us, we realised we were the matchmaker between a girl and her perfect outfit, and the transformation that she can take. We really realised that it was not just about falling in love with a dress, but potentially falling in love with herself just again a little bit more. So once we understood that, then it then translates to everything that you do.
And Brian, the final word to you.
Just be resilient, never give up, and keep innovating, keep adapting, and all the very best out there. Keep going.
Brian Walker, CEO of the Retail Doctor Group. Thanks also to Jane Kay from Bird's Nest in Cooma, from Canamble, Gillian Kelly and Harry Watson at Millpost Merino. To all of you, have a great weekend on ABC Radio Sydney and New South Wales.